Hey guys, welcome back to PhotoZone's channel. I'm Dallas, and it's been a while since my last video, but various reasons for that which I won't get into right now. So today I decided to make a little video about these two lenses here. On my right hand side I have one of my favorite lenses of all time, the Olympus 12-40 2.8 Pro. And a recent acquisition that I got is its slightly bigger, well, considerably bigger cousin, the 12-100 f4 Pro. Both these lenses are very similar in terms of their spec, and when I say spec I'm talking about build quality and autofocus and that sort of stuff. But the question everybody will be asking themselves is, if you're coming to the Olympus system or the Micro Four Thirds system and you're looking for a top quality general purpose zoom lens, which of these two would be the better one to get? It's a really difficult question to answer, but I've written down some notes and we'll just talk about a few things that could possibly influence you. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is sharpness. This lens, the smaller one, is definitely sharper than that one. I found this out when photographing products. So for instance, if I'm shooting this lens, it doesn't matter which aperture I'm using, I'm getting incredibly sharp images. Everything, you know, from f2.8 to around about f14 I've even shot this at, and I don't see any issue with diffraction or anything like that. This one, on the other hand, when I have photographed product with it, yeah, it's definitely not quite as sharp as this lens. So generally when I'm photographing product, you're looking at photographing or shooting between the aperture ranges of f8 to f11, sometimes f14, depending on the product and how much depth of field I need. But this lens I found was most certainly not quite as sharp as this one. If I was to quantify it, I would say, looking at around about, maybe this is about 80%, 80 to 90% as sharp as this particular lens here. This may not be a big deal for you, because even at 80 to 90% of this one's sharpness, it's still pretty damn sharp. I've used pro lenses from certain other brands that were not as sharp as this one, so that's, yeah, it's open for debate. Autofocus. Both of these lenses are very similar in terms of the way they autofocus. This lens is very fast, as is this one. Obviously it's got a bigger zoom range, so it may take a minuscule amount of time to focus, say from something, if you're at 100 millimeters and you're shooting something off in the distance and you suddenly want to come back to something close by. It's pretty quick, but obviously not as quick as this one because it has less distance to travel. Right. Versatility. Which of these is the more versatile lens? Now the answer to this is not as straightforward as it may seem. While we've got two things here, and that are an advantage over the smaller lens. One of them is obviously the zoom range, which we've already talked about. The other thing is that it has built-in image stabilization, which when combined with your OMD in-body image stabilizer gives you, I think it's up to 5.5 stops of safety net for camera shake, which is pretty impressive. I've heard stories of guys hand holding this lens with EM1 Mark IIs and EM1Xs, something like 5 seconds for handheld at night, which is crazy. So yeah, I haven't personally tried that, but I've read about it from some fairly well recognized reviewers online, and I believe them. Maybe one day I'll try it, who knows. So yeah, the other thing obviously is that when you buy this lens as opposed to this one, you're now using, or you're going to get half of the light, because you've got f4 versus f2.8. f2.8 will definitely be a big advantage if you're photographing things like weddings, which I recently had the opportunity to do for a family member. And if I didn't have this lens, I think I would have been in a lot of trouble, because as good as they are, Micro Four Thirds sensors are not going to perform in low light to quite the same level as your 35mm cameras will do. For example, the Nikon D5, I think the latest version, and obviously the Canon equivalents and the Sonys will obviously knock them all out of the water. But yeah, for what I was doing for the wedding that I photographed, this particular lens was great. I was able to shoot this in a very dimly lit chapel using a flash bounced off the back of the chapel, and with the inverse square law I was getting probably f2.8 at 1/60th of a second up in the front of the chapel, and I think my ISO was fixed at 500. Normally I would use auto ISO, but for that particular shoot I thought let me rather just fix it, and yeah, it worked out great. Right, the other advantage that this lens would have as opposed to that one, so we were talking about 2.8 versus f4, lightweightedness or lightweight. This is significantly lighter and smaller than this lens. So if you look at them together, this one is probably maybe 75%, well, this is 75% of the size of this one, but that's because I'm using the hoods. If I take the hoods off, let's get it off there, take that lens hood off, take that lens hood off, and you'll see what I'm talking about. There's quite a lot more of that one, and in terms of thickness or diameter of the lens, there's a bit more heft in this one also. So the problem with that is that if you're photographing and if you're using this lens for versatility and you're going, say for example, on vacation, it's a wonderful zoom range to have, but with a smaller lens or smaller body like an OMD body, this lens is going to be very heavy to drag around all day long, and you may or may not want that. Would you be better off with this lens and say for example another telephoto lens, a smaller one like the one I use, the 75mm 1.8? Yeah, maybe, depending on how much range you actually want. Obviously 75mm is not 100mm. There's a lot more light coming into that 75mm lens. Alright, so it basically boils down to whether or not you prefer lightweight and more light, or more zoom and more IS, image stabilization. So if I was you, I would get both. I did that. No, just kidding. But yeah, think about it. You know, obviously not everybody can afford everything, but if you can, I was just very lucky with this one. I picked it up at about half the retail price from a guy who had won it in a competition, who shoots with Canon and had no intention of ever using this stuff. Well, that's his loss, my gain. This one here, really good lens. I've had it since pretty much the beginning of my journey with Olympus, and it's been wonderful. This is actually the second one that I've owned. The first one I killed in a terrible accident in my studio when a 8-kilogram chess set fell on top of it after yeah, you know, flashbacks. No, not a good thing. All right, insurance replacement, and it's still going strong. I love this lens. I did think about selling it when I got this one, but after having shot the wedding, most definitely not. f2.8 for event photography is a must, purely because of the fact that you know when you're shooting at high ISOs on the Olympus cameras, you're not going to be giving the cleanest images that you possibly could give. Right guys, that's about all I have time for now. I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did like it, hit the thumbs up. If you didn't like it, scram, get lost. Just kidding, I'm just kidding. Hit the little bell for notifications of new videos, and hopefully soon I will be posting a lot more often. Until next time, take care.